In Israel, Prime Minister Beniamin Netanyahu reacted to Suleiman's killing by saying the U.S. has a right to defend itself just like Israel does. He credited President Trump with acting swiftly, forcefully, and decisively. The Israel Defense Forces also closed the Mount Hermon ski resort on the Golan Heights as a precaution against Iranian revenge attacks from Syria. And the Security Cabinet met to discuss the situation. Just a day before Suleiman was killed, Iranian-backed militiamen withdrew from the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad after 2 days of violence. Take a look at how things unfolded.
Protests erupted at the embassy after the U.S. carried out military strikes Sunday on 5 targets of a militia in Iraq and Syria backed by Iran. The U.S. blamed the militia for launching a rocket attack that killed an American contractor on a military compound in Iraq 2 days earlier. It was just the latest in a series of strikes by this militia.
So this group has carried out, according to the U.S., around 10, 11 rocket attacks in the last 6 months.
But this time, the U.S. struck back. And author and Middle East expert Seth Frantzman said the American response was a game changer.
It definitely is the first time, as far as I recall, that the Americans actually responded against these militias, despite the fact that hundreds of American soldiers have been killed and wounded by these groups over the years. In the past, the United States was worried about tangling with Iran. And I think finally they are willing to respond to this kind of harassment.
Israel condemned the violence at the U.S. Embassy, one of America's largest and most heavily guarded diplomatic missions in the world. Israeli Prime Minister Beniamin Netanyahu commended the U.S. on its actions against Iran and its proxies in the region.
It does put them on the same side of Israel, and I think from Israel's perspective, they're very happy to see the United States kind of wake up to the threat.
Israel itself knows it could be headed for battles with Iran. Israel Defense Forces Chief of Staff Lieutenant General Avi Kokovi said last week Israel is preparing for what he called a limited confrontation with Iran.
Israel wants to remove Iran from Syria and to not have them trafficking weapons in Iraq. The United States, of course, just doesn't want its soldiers being attacked. So Israel and America, of course, they're allies and have the same view, but they have slightly different long-term agendas.
The violence in Iraq comes as Iran and its allies have faced unprecedented mass protests in recent months, as President Trump's heavy sanctions have damaged Iran's economy.
Iran has been trying to push the Americans ever since the U.S. left the Iran deal, but also, since the 1980s with the hostage crisis. Iran wants America out of the Middle East. It calls the United States the Great Satan. It says that it's resisting. It would like to destroy Israel and the United States eventually in the long term.
The U.S. maintains around 5,000 troops in Iraq at the invitation of the Iraqi government in order to fight ISIS. Frantzman says a series of attacks against the U.S. is meant to test America's limits.
And we've seen this in the Gulf also. They attacked 6 oil tankers. They kidnapped a British oil tanker. They shot down a U.S. drone. That means they've attacked on land, air, and sea. This is a coordinated attack, and I think that Iran was waiting to see, okay, when will the Trump administration reply? And when they reply, that will give us an excuse to go even further.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News.
Alpha, Omega.